Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to another episode of Voices for Excellence. I am your host, Dr. Michael Connor, CEO and founder of the Agile Evolutionary Group. And as you know, the proud host of VFE. And today's guest is a good friend of mine out on the left coast, California, sunshine. I'm jealous because it's starting to get cold over here. As you can see, I got all my fall attire over here. You're still in that Southern California weather, but it is good to have Mr. Terrence Davis, who is the proud superintendent of Banning Unified School District in Banning, California. He serves on a myriad of different roles, whether it be on state coalition networks, organizations at the national level. Terrence has done everything. I just love speaking with him, going back and forth. Prior to, this recording, we were already talking for like 20 minutes, and then we're like, oh, we got to record this. So it is my absolute honor to have Mr. Terrence Davis on Voices for Excellence. Mr. Terrence Davis, my man.
And the crowd goes wild. Now, Dr. Michael Connor, I'm a little wild, and so I'm having a really good day. Now, here's 8 o'clock, but I'm hyped today. I think I shared with you, like I just been in a little funk. Sometimes we get knocked down, but usually I'm really good at getting back up, and when I get back up, stronger. My last little knockdown, I just been in this little gloom, and I'm out of it. And I think I'm out of it because I had an opportunity to share, my weight and what I was carrying with the people that, we had this communication with. And so it just feels good. So today is a good day. And I thank you for the opportunity, CEO and founder. CEO and founder. Listen to that. So I am honored. And before we get started, because, I go on a little flow and then I go, hey, slow it down, is that I listened to the episode that you did with Lynette White.
Yes. Communications
Extraordinaire. And I'm like, man, Dr. Connor asking these questions, he gets down in the gristle. He like, here's the, what did he say? And then that ain't stopped there, just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So I was like, okay, now I'm gonna have to bring this. So thank you for sending me some prompts ahead of time. That way I can get my thoughts organized, but I'm ready. I'm ready to rock and roll and have some conversations about the work that we're doing, the challenges that we're doing, and how we best support kids, and more importantly, support people, because the people in the classroom, those are the people who are impacting students every day. Not necessarily the leader, but the leader has to provide the supports, understand what's going on to kind of steer it and keep it moving forward. So I'm excited, man.
Absolutely. No, it's such an honor to have you on here. Terrence, I've been following your work. You have been doing an absolutely amazing job out in Banning. One thing that I'm really, really proud of you is how you're elevating the voice of your community and your students. And that, it's changing times. We understand that, we have 2 new generations that are outliers to any generations that we've ever seen, right? Because of the explosion of technology, artificial intelligence, because of the new demands, the social justice mindset collectively that the students have, we can't deliver the same model. But the way you're actually articulating the needs and the wants of your families, Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and articulating that into the organizational strategy to change, right, or to transform your business model or education model that is aligned to the needs of Generation Z, Generation Alpha is just absolutely incredible. I just, like I said, I'm a big fan of your work, and I love that you're on VFE, and my audience will actually get to see the genius and the expertise of Mr. Terrence Davis. So, Miss Lynette White episode, we were going deep into theory. We were going deep into context, research around communications and strategic approaches to expand communication. Now, let's get ready to have some fun on VFE. Okay. My audience used this as an asynchronous tool for professional learning. So again, just unwrap and unpack your expertise for my audience. But before we get into some of the deep questions, right? The deep questions that have theoretical and conceptual meaning around strategy to advance education, to advance excellence and innovation. This is a fun question, all right? But proud superintendent of Banning Unified, everybody knows Mr. Terrence Davis.
Mm.
You're admired, right? You're admired by many education stakeholders, just not in the state of California, but nationally, right? You've served on a myriad of high-level advisory boards as well as leadership roles on different coalitions in California. But for my audience who may not know Mr. Terrence Davis, what song describes your excellence in equity work in the field?
Yeah, I love this question so much. And that's a hard question to just spur out on somebody. It is, because that requires some thinking and it requires some reflection on your practice. And so I have a song. So I'm going to start with who sings the song first. And I want to know if you know, because if you do know, I'm going to be maybe a little surprised, maybe not, because you on the super cerebral side, because that's what this music kind of is. And then if you don't know, you got to check it out. So the group is Black Violin. You heard of Black Violin?
Have not heard of Black Violin.
Oh, okay. Write it down.
Yep.
You don't have to open that puppy up, but the song is Virtuoso. And so let me just share with you what virtuoso means. And so the group Black Violin is two cats out of Florida. And I believe they're African American, but they basically play the violin and string instruments and with a little hip hop flavor.
Okay.
So it is a combination, and I'm going to articulate why I think this kind of embodies the work that I do. Is like it takes the best worlds of both. So, classical music, when I was growing up, that was like, what is that? But I've come to learn that, man, that music calms the spirit and the soul and gives you an intellectual flavor and pop. And that's kind of the work that we have to do. But how do you still do that while still not losing your flavor, if you will? And so that's why this song pops for me. And the way they describe this song is they say this song is mastery of the violin and their ability to captivate and inspire through their music. And the way I then take that information and channel that into what I do is I try to do what is in the best interest for people who support kids. So I do feel, and I've just come to this, I'm 50 plus. And so I've just come to this is that I do have some skills. I do have some things that I'm really good at. And one of those is connecting with people, understanding people, and then taking that information, and the word that I like to use, harness that to try to create conditions and supports that assist people and students to flourish. And so that's why this song Virtuoso, man, it's flavor, but it's also an intellectual kind of dive into a feeling. And so that's what kind of describes it. I know that was a lot, but that's just what it is.
No. Continue, Terrence, because first, yes, I am going to check out the Black Violin Virtuoso. Okay. But when your explanation, and I want to unwrap this, right? Because it's perfect, right? Perfect to describe you. I like to use the word combinatorial, right? This combination or this polarity between the classical aspects of what the violin presents and then bringing in that hip hop, right? That hip hop center, and then that hip hop nature brings that synergy together. So this combinatorial in the context of, I like to say, this polarity aspect of and. But when you look at this and you bring that, Terrence, to describe you, best interest for students and understanding the people to create the conditions for them. That's engineering design thinking, right? Engineering design process, design thinking 101, first element of empathy, understanding your customers so that you can design in this co-creative manner or co-creation manner. But the Black Violin, yes, man, the mastery of violin to captivate its audience. You are creating a masterful piece, right? In the context of your education model out in Banning, when you're talking about captivating your audience, your community, right. Generation Z and Generation Alpha. But going into the next question, right? Now, Banning Unified, has a very bold vision, Mr. Terrence Davis. Very, very bold. It is bold, right? It is, name of my book is intentional, it's
Okay.
bold, and it's certainly unapologetic for your community, right? But this bold vision is needed in the AC stage of education, right? Now, in our personal discussions, Terrence, I have told you that your vision is unprecedented, right? Specifically in the context of what I'm adding now, college ready,
Yeah.
career ready, and now in this new age of Delta 2030, being digital ready. Now,
Yeah.
you're certainly giving your students the agency, right? As evidence, you have your own district podcast. Now, to my audience, Banning Unified and Mr. Terrence Davis has their own district podcast, but take a look at this. You want to talk about agency 2.0? The guests on his podcast are the students.
Mm.
Giving the
Mm.
students the primary voice of that podcast. But these are all noted Delta 23 mandates, right? When we think about that. But when we talk about the vision to prepare students for the future of work, unwrap this for my audience. And what does this look like from an actionable and articulated process so that they can underscore these strategies in their district or their classrooms?
And I'm going to bring this back later, but I think a major concept in education is a lot of people got into working with students because their love of students and seeing them grow. But did the focus always center around where the student is? I'm not so sure. And so I'll say one thing that may be familiar to some people, and I know you've heard this, like, so I teach science, I teach math. Do you? Or do you teach students? So to kind of dive into this is, what do students need to know? But it's about the students. It's not per se about the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And then why do they need to know that? So what is the application from the learning that you're going to have to the real world? We talk about students. I'm learning this here. This is back in the day. Here's the worksheet. Here are my spelling words. I have to write the word on the board because I used to get in trouble a lot, 57 times. But what is that really doing to me that I'm going to be able to apply to life? So when I think about that in the context of education in our world today, it is, what is the assessment that we are giving students to learn where they're at, and what curriculum are we using to address their specific needs? And so when I look at that, I think of a few things. I think of real life skills. I think of the experiences that students have. And what do our learners need? So it's not always about, here's the subject that I'm teaching, and I got to make sure I get the subject out. Where are you, student, in the space? And what can I teach you and differentiate in order to ensure that you're understanding what's going on? So I used to be a special education teacher. I started as a special education teacher, went into special education administrator, then moved to HR, then moved to superintendency. And one of the things that I used to say a long time ago is that education is going to end up being like an IEP for every student. Yeah. And that's what this is really all about. So if I have a classroom of 30 students, do I know where those 30 students are? Because they're all at different spaces and places. Yeah. And then how do I differentiate to connect with each student? Because if I'm not doing that, I am missing the boat, and I am not able to assess their progress, or if they have progress, where they're specifically at. And so that's, to me, what this means about the vision for the community. But you can only do that if you listen to students, if you listen to teachers, if you listen to parents in the community. And if you're not doing that, you don't know. You're making decisions based upon your own schema that may not involve the learner.
Absolutely. Well stated, Mr. Davis, because I've been stating this for a long time. Right? It's that, and I love that you contextualized it in a way that is simplified, and it is also can be articulated in a fairly easy manner. It's not dense with research or theory. And the one thing that you stated was, we teach students, not content, right? And if we eliminate that perspective, right, of I only teach content, and adopt that mindset or that shared mind frame of we teach students, that's when we would move to what I'm stating now, is moving from a teacher to a true practitioner, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
when you become a practitioner, you're able to diagnose gaps and identify targeted prescriptions or interventions to be able to close those gaps at this exponential manner, or even accelerate on, I like to say, the baseline that students have, i.e., their ability to access tier one in any context. But you stated it really clearly, right? Is that when we think about teaching students, we have to be able to diagnose and differentiate accordingly, right? And that's where now in this new age, or I should say the AC stage of education, we really have to move to this facilitation hybrid model of being a practitioner, right? Students are co-authors of their learning, which you are
Right.
stated, right? And then now, as they are the co-authors of their learning, the teacher or the practitioner is able to differentiate accordingly based off of their individual needs. Well stated. And it goes back to empathy. Design thinking 101, first element that you underscore in every single thing is that empathy aspect of it. Their voice. Continue on, Mr. Davis. I know you want to say something.
So I just, as you talk, I think about, I think there's some differences between you and I that I've identified. You may not think so, but so I do things, I think about things, but I don't necessarily have a framework for what that means. You like have all the frameworks. You have all the intellectual knowledge, the research, and the way you articulate it. Like, okay, yes, that I am doing something. So that's really important to have both. Absolutely. And have the understanding, because at the end of the day, I think we're all trying to do really good work. Absolutely. And we're all doing great things for students, but sometimes we all need just a little bit of, understanding on as a framework, as a theory of what we're actually doing and how it provides benefit for students in the community. And you are masterful of that. The other thing I want to say is I just appreciate the love. Like, you give a lot of love, Dr. Collins. Like, you're very positive, give a lot of love. Not everyone's like that. And so people look at you. I'm going to just tell you, like, you are like, they're afraid to talk to you because you're like, man, this guy, he knows everything. Like, he can touch a book and recite the book. When I first met you, it was on I think it was with CAUSA, and you were breaking down a framework. And I'm like, who is this cat? I'm like, whoa, I had to step back. However, again, it goes back to that beginning. How do you mix that intellectual thought practice and research to break it down into presentable information where others don't feel like, oh my gosh, we're just having real talk, and then they can apply it in their own context to things that they're already doing. And that's what I love to do.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, Ebony and Ivory, look, salt and pepper, it worked, right? I know what I'm good at, right? I know this is going back to what? You play sports, I play sports, right? If we do what we're good at, what is the old Bill Belichick? Do your job.
That's right. That's what
and that is it. I know what I'm good at. Finding that synergy, Terrence, and that's why we get along so well, is that level of connectivity. In simplistic forms, my brother, you are doing the work, and keep doing what you're doing because you are a model.
And we need each other. We need each other to put it in, because it creates a stronger fabric and fiber in order to be strong to like move it forward. So it's not about competition. It's about growth and learning and utilizing each other to do that.
Man, I admire you so much, Terrence. But here, now what you're alluding to the next question, because this is why you are loved in the state of California as well as nationally, right? So outside of your role as superintendent of Banning Unified, you serve as the regional president of the California Association of School Administrators, AXA, and on the advisory board of the District Administration Leadership Institute, DALI. The reputation around the country for DALI, unbelievable. A really great group. Amy is doing an amazing job there. So your role on these, right, on these two different coalitions, both in state of California as well as nationally. Now, your differentiated role of services, right? How would you now encourage leaders to seek out organizations like Axe, like Dolly, for continuous professional growth that you alluded to before in your last answer, with these new leadership challenges that we always talk about in the HC stage of education?
So let me make a quick clarification. So I have participated in Dolly, but I'm not on the Dolly National Board. I'm on the RTM National Advisory Board. I just
RTM. Okay. Yeah, my apologies. RTM, body.
I want to say, because somebody listening like, no, he not. Like, I always try to like clarify those kind of things. And then I served as our region president. Riverside County, one of the largest counties in Southern California, So I served as a president. I'm still on the executive board, and now I'm on the state board for AXA, the administrative representative for our state. And so those, first of all, I'm honored to serve in that space. Now, it takes time, it takes energy and effort, but the learning, the networking from others is bar none. So this is what I will say about my colleagues. I would say that when you find something that you're connected to, because as a superintendent, as an assistant superintendent, whatever you do, there's all these circles of people, right? And so I just happened to get involved with Access several years ago, and just kind of, this has just been my pathway. But when you're involved with other educators, other leaders from different, whether it's the region level, the state level, or the national level, it brings you value. Yeah. Because sometimes we don't understand, especially as a superintendent, you think that you're the only one dealing with X. Now, I know better than that because I've been doing the role for a little while. But on a national level, you really get to see these challenges are similar, even with some of the different laws in each state. So it brings you value. The other thing that it does is it brings you vibrance. Yeah. It gives you a sense of like, it wakes you up to let you know you are really doing great work, because not everyone feels good and accomplished. I know some people think everyone feels that way every day, but we all have ups and downs, highs and lows. So when you have some vibrance, you feel valued. And the last thing it provides me with is some reflection about the work that we're doing and how important it is. And then I just mentioned that non-competition. So sometimes, I know you've heard of imposter syndrome. I know that, well, I don't think this happens to you. But like, you go somewhere and you hear something and you're like, wow. And I'm like, I feel like I'm standing still. But that's just intellectually. You like, no, I got that. Because you just get all deep down in the woods. But it brings you some sense of like, you are growing. You're creating a growth mindset to do better. And so the last thing I want to say is connect to different circles of people, different circles of content, because I think at the state level, the national level, it creates different thinkers to resolve the challenges that we all face differently. And so when you do that, it's not just you, right? The smartest person in the room, well, it's probably Dr. Michael Connor, but the smartest person in the room is not a person, it's the room, because it's collective wisdom to pull it together. So that's what I would say. So very important, but there's a lot of different organizations and agencies. So I would try. Let me try this organization and see what they're about. Does it align with my value system, how they treat each other, and what they're doing? And so the other organization that we didn't talk about is I'm also heavily involved with NCEE, the National Center for Education on the Economy. And when I get with superintendents in that group, the mindset, the conversations are so different. And it is, I get intellectually inspired by those conversations with my colleagues. So it's a growth thing that helps someone, and also, helping strengthening your network, if you will.
Absolutely. And Terrence, my apologies for the with the information regarding Dolly and everything. RTM is great and everything.
So it's not all good. Yes.
All good. Listen, look, you're involved. That's all that matters. You're involved. Your voice needs to be involved. But I really love the three critical points that you targeted: personal value, vibrance, and reflection. Right? Really, really, really think that is very important. But a statement, right, that you highlighted is so critical. I think that we need to expand on that from a professional practice within the ecosystem. The power is within the room, you stated, right? And having that power, that collective power, in lieu of individuality in the context of one person trying to drive the vision, one person trying to drive the strategy when the power is within the community, within the room, as you stated, right? I'll never forget, that when you think about some of and I'm bringing the sports analogy into it, the teams that have won recently, they have the best teams. They don't have the superstars, right?
Right.
Now, one would argue about the Denver Nuggets with Joker, right? Dr. Alex Marrero, we know he's a superstar, right? But that team, the coalition, which is undeniable and unbeatable. Elation. We need to have more of that in education, which you stated is the connection to the different circles, both at the regional level, state level, and then at the national level. Thank you for this service that you're doing, Terrence, because your voice is certainly needed in all these different circles to advance, right? To advance the mission for our students in the AC stage of education. But I want to get to a hard question, right? And again, I left this question ambiguous for a reason, right? Because I wanted it to be high level so that my audience could go back, unpack it in an asynchronous manner, replay it, align it to their practice, and really challenge their individual practice from a creative tension standpoint. But again, there's no right or wrong answer to this, right? And there's a level of objectivity and subjectivity within this answer. But again, I created this question specifically for that. Define excellence and equity in the context of classroom instruction. Okay, not limited to a specific discipline or content area, but I just want to unwrap this first part, right? So there's a level set with the audience, and then we'll move into the second part. But define excellence and equity in the context of classroom instruction.
So this is what I did. So in preparation, I just kind of wrote down my thoughts. And I'm good with my thoughts, so I'll share that first. And then I went to AI. Mm-hmm. And so this is the thing about AI. You have to be on it because it expands your knowledge, your vocabulary, and then you put that into your own context and in your own words. So it strengthens what you already know. So this is what I originally, to answer that question, excellence and equity. First of all, is do you know what each student needs? So in the environment, if I'm in the classroom, I'm at a school site, if I know what each student needs because I've built and developed a relationship with them, I can better serve them. That's equity. The next piece is, are they improving? Are they advancing? Are we developing independence in our students to become critical thinkers? Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the excellent part. So this is where that would be my answer. Now, Dr. Michael Connor answer is going to be something else, but let me tell you what I get from AI. Okay. So it talks about equity and excellence. They're the fundamental principles of what we're doing. However, it talks about equity in education, meaning that all students, regardless of your background, regardless of whatever, how do you provide the necessary success for them? But that means that you have to know them. So it connects to my initial thought without even looking at AI. And so here's just a comment on that. When equity started, this terminology of equity in our systems, let's call it 10 years ago or so. Now, before it was equity, it was something else. It's just the terminology has just changed. Absolutely. But in time, now I'm going to get a little deeper. In time, this term of equity and what I'm doing in the equity work has now been met with, it's like, stop using that. There are people now, as a superintendent, won't get a job if they're utilizing the vernacular and the terminology or we're doing equity work. Right. And so I know our audience probably knows Dr. Carl Cohn. Dr. Carl Cohn was superintendent in Long Beach for about 10 years. So I've been very fortunate to have him as a mentor and spend some time with him. And I bring him up because he shares this notion of doing the equity work versus utilizing the language of equity work. And I'll say it this way. I don't necessarily use the vernacular I'm doing equity work. In Banning, when you go to a Banning campus, you see diversity and difference in students. You see it. And I worked in the district next door, and I didn't quite see it that way. It's just so different. So here's my point that I'm trying to get to. Before it started in with Black, students, Hispanic students. So it was like, here's this Black push, and that's going to, in theory, offend some people because it suggests, why are you only focusing on the Black students? Well, I think we all know that historically why. However, without getting into that, what about the other students? So when you are addressing, regardless of your color or your background, poverty, what students need, that breaks it down. That means that equity is something that we have to do in order to excel for all students.
Absolutely.
And so the last piece is the excellence piece. And so this is a different type of break it down. When you start talking, I just, whoa, man, you just, whoa. And so I'm talking like, I don't know what I'm talking about, but so the excellence piece is really refers to the pursuit of high academics and providing students challenging so that way they can be successful in life. And here's what I want to say about that. In our school systems, that has not always been the expectation. Mm-hmm. We get comfortable. We go through the routine. We may not be pushing ourselves. We may not have exposure to high quality practices. And so that excellence piece is, how do we ensure that the community that we're serving, the students that we're serving, is receiving the best? And that means that we have to assess, we have to do some data analysis, and then we have to come back and change. So that is creating the continuous improvement cycle to basically say that, let's try this, let's get better, let's learn from what we haven't done to continue to get better. That's excellent. Mm-hmm. And the only way I think that happens is that you have to keep that in front of you. Because as human beings, we default to comfortability, which is status quo. And you know this. If you are status quo and you're comfortable just doing the same kind of things, you are not staying the same. You are going backwards because the world around us continually evolves and gets better. So we have to elevate our game to excellence all day. And we have to do that from an equity lens, if you will, to meet everyone and every student where they are.
I love that definition, Terrence. And I'll get to the second part. I just want to interject with some comments. To my audience, that was a very good part and parcel definition of equity and excellence. Terrence, I want to highlight one thing that you stated about equity, which I agree with you 1,000%. I think equity, the word equity, mentioning equity in an educational context has been weaponized. If we really look at the true definition of equity, the work that we're doing with regards to just simply pedagogy in itself is equity, because we are trying to deliver instruction content in an equitable manner for all of our students so they individually rise in this context of their personalized goals, which you stated, an IEP for everybody, right? So if we really want to unwrap equity, the word, there is about 10 to 15 different variables that you and I can identify that equates to this broad definition of equity. We have polarized it so much to look at it in one context.
Yes.
Great. And I love how you defined it, that it goes beyond race. If we want to talk about propensity of poverty, students that are living in poverty, there's a multitude of different diverse ethnic and cultural backgrounds that fall in poverty, right? That is how we need to create equity for those students to uplift them all. Special education students, equity in the context of how we're delivering those individualized services to them to ensure that we're elevating all boats. So AI is going to be the actual precision point to get to the zone of proximal development of students in the context of acceleration and growth to close gaps. That is a tool that is going to create equity in our schools. I love that, Terrence, of how you defined it, of moving away from it being a weaponized form in the education world, and also how you brought in that context of defining excellence by using assessment, by using data analysis, and then you brought it back to the whole continuous improvement model or the continuous improvement cycles. Excellence and defining what equity is. Now, Terrence, second part, how do we get our classroom practitioners to look at that equity embed or encompass equity-driven, excellence-driven practices in the classroom.
And I think there's
great level set and definition, Terrence, by the way.
I think there's a few things. First is getting, and we talked about a little earlier, getting the mindset to shift around I teach students. Mm-hmm. So if you think that way, then it's no longer about the subject. You're just going to deliver content. Mm-hmm. You're going to have some academic discourse. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it from I'm teaching students, one, and then two, then I know the student. So then I can teach the student better. And then the other piece is providing a space to provide context to share what that means as, let's say, a school site. So the most highest performing school sites, they have something that other schools don't have. They have this synergy centered around what the practices and norms are of those teachers in that space to collaboratively move that school system forward. That means that they're working together. They know the students, they know each other. It's shared information. That way they advance. The other thing is, so we were doing some research. NCEE is the National Center for Education and Economy. They're a highly globally research-based organization. So they look at the highest performing schools in the world. And one of the things that the research suggests is that the best schools, the teachers learn from each other. So if you have a space where in those learning communities that you are refining your practices based upon the data that the students are based upon their assessments, and you refine your practice collaboratively, they all grow together. And it's not necessarily someone coming in to tell people what to do. They may need to learn how to do that effectively and efficiently as a team. But when the teams work together, and you mentioned it in the sports analogy, then you have more success.
Absolutely.
And so I think you are excellent at this, is how does one provide a model and a framework for that to happen in the system? And I think that will assist teachers and practitioners who are working with students every day, and those site leaders who are basically overseeing that and responsible for that, to create that culture, create that those conditions for students to learn and progress.
Yeah, no, Terrence, great, because what I loved about your answer is you did not reference to any content-driven, content-specific strategies or methods, that we talk about a lot, right? MTSS, integrated model, science of reading, specific routines and strategies to get to this level of comprehension, higher level of conceptual knowledge, the third shift within the Common Core math. You didn't mention that. You said, I teach students and I know my students. Once you know your students and once you take that mindset that you teach students, the content, the strategies, and the embedded differentiation becomes easier. The delivery of core instruction becomes easier because why? You know your students. Just like every successful coach, they know their team. They know each one of their individual players, and they put them in situations to be what? Successful.
That's right. Let me just, so I was listening to, Lynette White, I don't know what's wrong with her. She does all kinds of stuff. And so on this podcast that she has, they were interviewing Michael Fullen. So this Dr. Michael Fullen. And so they just released this episode last week. And I was listening to something, and he said, he talked about, we have had a tendency to push so much instructional content and knowledge that we forgot about kind of the other side of that. The working with the social emotional, all of the other stuff. And so that suggests that if we're just driving that home all the time, we can't be missing the point. And that's the connectivity. And so I think it's critical for one to stop and reflect upon that and see what the practices are. What are we doing? And what is the impact that we're having? So.
Absolutely, Terrence, masterfully stated. Wow. To my audience, please rewind that answer back. Specifically, what I want my audience to do is to perseverate and cogitate on, I teach students, I know my students, right? And a colleague of mine stated that, and his name's Dr. Louvel Brown, Superintendent at Ithaca. He said, how can you teach your students if you don't know your students?
That's right.
Right. And that all That always resonate with me. You just, yeah, again, validating all those points. But let's go on that, right? Let's stay on that topic. I want to segue into around knowing your students, knowing your community, knowing the voice, right, or the voices of your community, right, and being a part of that design process in the AC stage of education. Now, Terrence, as you continue to elevate the voice of all, which again, you have masterfully done and continuously to do it, what challenges, and of course, a leader that is grounding his or her work on the transparency and the voice, the agency of the community and students leading the design process of the district and what those education inputs and throughputs look like to get to the outputs of the community, you will experience some challenges, right? And I know you have, Terrence, like we all have when we love the students a little bit more than the adults. But what challenges have you experienced, and what strategies could you provide leaders to continue the urgency for agency with our most important customers, families, and students?
So I think I have a really good example of that. As a superintendent, I worked in another district, and this was well before the pandemic, about 2016 or so. And I was trying to push, sharing our voice, amplifying our voice. This is what we're doing. Show what students are doing. And I pushed a little harder. I don't push as hard now because I think I've learned how to get better at that. But it took a long time for that steam to grow. It took a couple years for people to see the value in ensuring that the voices of our staff and our students are heard, one, and then two, how do you use that voice to then get better? And so
Absolutely.
After several years, I really start to see it grow. And then even after I left, it continues to grow. And so when I left that system and then came to where I am now, I realized that it was a closed system where I am. No one communicated. I remember, now this is during the pandemic, I came into a classroom and I said, I want to post this. And they were like, no, I don't want you to post that. Why? This is what we do here. It was kind of like what we do is private, and what we do, I don't want anybody to know or see. And now advanced 4 years from them, now we have people going, please come and see what we're doing. And so some of those challenges are, there's always so many perspectives. I use a Stephen Covey quote, and basically it goes something like this. And every time I present, every single time, I have the slide and I talk about it. So this is like a presentation. So basically it says that we see the world not as it is, but we see the world based upon our own perspective, our own experiences. And so when we open our mouths to say something, we're not sharing what reality is, we're sharing our own perspective. And so I use that in a presentation context because as the presenter, as someone is speaking and there are 100 people in the room, there's going to be 100 different perspectives, interpretations of what was said. And so if I know this, then I know that I'm not going to get in an argument or upset with someone because they think something differently. I'm going to try to understand that and learn. So that is a challenge, because the perspectives, if you listen, if you open yourself up, if you're vulnerable and you take the time to do it, that means that you're hidden. All these people are sharing information with you that you may not agree with, but you have to listen to it in order to improve or understand the local flavor. So that's one. The other thing is there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so you can say something and it can be interpreted wrong. It can be taken out of context. And so sometimes that creates a hurdle. And so you have to not let that lead you, because what you focus on expands. You have to be aware of it and then maybe refine how you say what you do to have a better communication strategy in the future. The other thing is, what did I say? See the change? You have to stay the course, because there's going to be bumps in the road. And so, and life is just very challenging. Even if I didn't have a job and I stayed at home, and which is a job in itself, and you just taking care of the responsibilities of life takes time. And so given that, staying the course and knowing that there's a a purpose and you're having an impact in the work that you're doing, because we're all human beings. And so when things are said, is how do we handle that? And that means you have to have a strong mindset, and you have to have some confidence in yourself, and you have to have courageousness, because there are people who don't like me. And guess what? That's okay. You don't have to like me, but I don't use that as a marker to then I can't do this because you don't like me. No, that means that I'm not fulfilling my purpose on life, which is to support people, to support kids. And so I think the last thing I want to say is you have to ensure that you're visible. You have to be visible, because I can espouse whatever I want to espouse. But if I'm in the space and I listen to something, and then I take that back to the team and we make some tweaks and we're maybe able to make it happen, you buy that much more credibility, because one, you listen, and two, and most importantly, you've done something about it. And I have several examples of that happening. Not that I'm trying to push it to make it happen, but is this good for people? Can we do it? And if we can, why not? Because that makes other people happy, and it asserts their voice, and it lets them know, hey, I am a part of this community. So just kind of some things, challenges and nuances in terms of getting to listening to voice and then utilizing voices to make active change.
Absolutely, Terrence. Well stated. I love the aspect of perspectives and vulnerability. I think that you characterized this level of, I like to say, and it references back to Tim Brown's work. They're out of California, right? IDEO, that coalition that focuses on design thinking. You broke that down fully. Convergent thinking versus divergent thinking. And you really expanded on that level of divergent thinking, perspectives and vulnerability, awareness around your community strategy. I'm thinking of mindfulness when you talk about awareness, being cognizant and aware of the situation with the perspectives, and exuding that level of vulnerability, divergent thinking, but staying the course and being visible, right?
The other piece that I missed in there was, when you listen, if you listen with your heart,
absolutely,
that makes all the difference in the world, because now that's just not I'm listening to complete a task, to be compliant.
Compliancy,
listening with my heart to make a change because it's the right thing to do. I am not a compliance-driven person. Compliance is not my driver. What my driver is, what is the best thing to do? And so I figure out how to navigate that to move it forward. But that's me listening with my heart, because I give my heart, soul, body, effort, and energy to the work, because we're not just educating students, we're changing the world based upon what the world needs.
Absolutely. And you know what? You're getting me really, really invigorated. And I'm actually having this profound feeling, right? Because I'm looking at this from my own independent research within my book, with the disruptive effect model and the anchors of innovation science, that first pillar, lean practices, right? When I think about lean practices and this kind of like this causality or correlation between design thinking, that is exactly what we need to do. That's what it's stating in the theory. Leading with the heart, listening, truly listening, not just from a compliancy standpoint, but there's that level of being authentic, that you're going to go back, heard the voices, and put it into practice. I tell you, Terrence, 101, brother, 101. That's that. Listen, that's that ebony and ivory right there, brother. You and I.
And people know.
Go ahead. Yeah.
People know this, and kids know this. When you are authentic as a teacher, when a student feels that you care about them, you know about them, they will do anything for you. Students don't want to fight teachers. They don't want to be, they want to be cared about. And when you come across and kids and people feel that, then they will open up to you. And I'm not saying that's easy work. That's challenging, because life is challenging. But when you can get to that point where that is your default and people know that's your default, man, you're going to move at the speed of trust. So.
Absolutely. No, Terrence, I tell you, the hardest design aspect, or the hardest part to elevate education, the ecosystem in totality, is not the hardware, i.e. curriculum, resources, AI tools. Is exactly what you're highlighting. It's the software. How are you able to establish relationships and truly build on the community voice. But last question, you made it through, man. Last question. Now, this question, I say only 3 words, but now I'm starting to see people come up with innovative ways to, not be, I should say, to that static, right? That static mandate of 3 words. So I've been saying this since episode 1. Take it as it is. What 3 words do you want our audience to leave with regards to innovative transformation in the AC stage of education? What 3 words do you want today's VFE audience to leave with about innovation and excellence as we move towards Delta 2030?
So I have 3 words, and then I'm going to do a short little breakdown. Connectedness, social interaction, and community. And these 3 words are my framework, okay? And so we are all connected to each other. The pandemic showed us that. We need to be connected we're connected to the earth, and we're connected to each other as human beings. So when we come with that mindset and we exude that, we will more and we do more when we're connected. Next is social interaction, how we engage with each other. Engaging with each other isn't at the dinner table and we're all on our phones. We just happen to be in the space. Or we're at a meeting and we're on our phones or in the phones and things are being said. That's not social interaction. We should be adjusting how we interact with each other to have a better connection. And finally, when you do all of those things, you're creating community. So what community do you want to create? We work in the school community. So what should a school community look like? Synergy, working with each other, collaborating with each other, listening, a lot of things. And so those are my 3 words. And I'm going to learn more about these and have all the research behind it to then have much more articulation about how they impact the system and move us forward. Connectedness, social interaction, and community.
There it is. To my audience, you heard it from Mr. Terrence Davis. The 3 words, I love it: connectiveness, social interaction, and community. And that is exactly what you're finding out in Banning Unified. Any of my audience members that want to be able to really see how agency is driving educational inputs and also student outcomes, please go to Banning, California. Mr. Terrence Davis, my brother, you lasted VFE. You're off the hook. Oh, man, it's so good to have you on, man.
I don't know how to survive some Dr. Michael Connor questions. I don't know. And then more importantly, okay, so even if you have a question, more importantly, it's the follow through, because it really breaks apart what we're talking about to then apply. Because we could talk about high level words, but what does that mean in real life and in real practice? So thank you for the opportunity. This was fun. Like I'm invigorated. Like I'm excited. I'm like, ooh, like this is like I've ran a marathon today. So I'm good.
I ran it with you. We both came in at the same time. So now, Terrence, for my audience, right? Like I said, they use this as a professional learning platform, and they like to reach out to my guests with further questions or even statements of where you guys can create a professional network to be able to expand this work much broadly. That's the software that I'm talking about in the education ecosystem. How would they be able to contact you directly if they want to follow up from this episode?
Yeah, so a few ways. I am on what they call X, aka Twitter. Who knows what's going on there? at DAV8, so T Dave 8. And then also on LinkedIn at Terrence Davis, but you can email me at tdavis@banningusd.k12.ca.us. And yeah, let's dialogue, because listen, we have to learn from each other. But in order to do that, we have to put ourselves out there to be open to do that. And then you in return receive a gift. And I'm not talking about from me. You receive a gift from each other by networking and learning from each other. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And Terrence, it has been an absolute honor to have you on. I can't wait to see you. I'll be out in California very soon. We'll get together. Definitely got to break bread and continue this conversation. Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Terrence. And on that note, onward and upward, everybody. Have a great evening.